Hi friends, in this session I'm going to explain what is exception and how to handle exception in Java. Alright, so let me give a um, quick intro on what are all the things we are going to see. Exception, and then the 5 keywords to manage the exception handling, and then multiple catch classes, nested try statements, and Java built-in exceptions, and then chained exceptions. So these are all the stuff you're gonna see. Let's get into the video. Alright, so let me tell you what is exception. See, exception is nothing but it's an object that contains the details of the error that occurred in your program. So a program, when we run a program, when we run a project, we come up with some error. We may come up with some error. So those error, what Java does, it captures the error and it creates an object, and that object we call it as the exception. Right? So how do we handle these exceptions? Before we look into that, let me see what is the super class in this exception. Alright, so as I said, the error is made into an object. Alright, where the error occurred, it's been made into an object that we call it as the exception. So how do Java call this exception? The parent class of this exception, it is variable, and again it's been categorized into two distinct branches. One is error and the other one is exception. So error, this branch of error are handled by the Java runtime environment, and the other one, exception, it's been handled by the end user. The developer. Alright, so who develops the project, they're gonna handle the other distinct branch called exception. And again, this exception branch is been categorized into two. One is checked exception and the other is unchecked exception. In other words, one is compiled exception and the other one is runtime exceptions. So checked exceptions or exceptions are handled by the developer, wherein the unchecked exceptions, in other words, runtime exceptions that are handled by the Java runtime environment. Alright. Okay. Now, what are all the 5 keywords to manage the exception handling? So those 5 keywords are try, catch, throw, throws, and then finally. So these are all the 5 keywords that are used to manage the exception handling. Alright, so with this we're gonna make a project based on these exception concepts, and in this I will show you how do we use the multiple classes, and how to use the try statement, nested try statements, that is 2 or more try statements, and then chained exception. What is chained exceptions, and some of you built-in exceptions. Okay, fine. Before that, let me give a short view, like checked exception. What are the checked exceptions here? Class not found exceptions. When Java, Java is unable to find the class which you are trying to run. In that case, this exception occurs. Clone not supported exception. So this occurs like when we try to clone an object and Java doesn't support the clone not. When you try to clone an object, but the thing is, like, the task, it doesn't implement the cloner interface. In that case, this exception is thrown by the Java runtime. This exception has to be thrown. It should be these checked exceptions are handled by the developer, who is going to create the program, the project. And then illegal access exceptions, when you try to when a resource it doesn't have the end user, it doesn't have access, but still if that resource is that you tries to access that resource, that then this illegal access exception occurs. Instantiation exception, when you try to create an object, or some initialize, when you try to create an object or component, in that scenario, instantiation exception occurs. Interrupt exceptions, and then no such field exceptions, no such method exceptions. These exceptions are in a class we try to access a field or method which doesn't exist. In that case, these exceptions are thrown, and it has to be mentioned by the developer who creates the application. Okay, then let's have a look on the unchecked exceptions. Arithmetic exceptions. This is this exceptions, arithmetic exceptions. When we, for example, when you try to divide and divide a number with zero value or any other numerical error occurred, and those error are made into an object. That object we call it as arithmetic exceptions, and it is handled by the runtime environment. Okay, Java runtime environment, and then array index out of bounds exceptions. Like, just consider an array. We do have 10 elements. The array size is of 10 elements, and we try to access with the array of 11. In that case, index out of bounds exception would occur. Okay, and then class cast exception. Like we try to like what to say, parent class and subclasses are there in the Java application. So parent class can hold the subclass. When if you try to if you try in vice versa, like child class, if you try to have the parent class in child class, then a class cast exception will occur. Or if some other class object is assigned uh, to some other class which is nowhere related, in that case this I mean, it can't be, I mean, the class, that object can't be converted to a particular object type. In that case, this class cast exception occurs. Illegal argument exceptions. Here the arguments which are sent are not defined, or not as per the template. In that case, this error occurs. Index out of bounds exceptions, and then null pointer exceptions, number format exceptions. Number format exceptions, null pointer exceptions, and number format exceptions, or like that is related to the number. Just we define some format to key in the input for data, and which is not followed. In that case, number format exception occurs. All right. Okay, fine. Now what I'm going to do, like let me explain the exceptions, and then with the multiple catch with multiple catch block, and then nested try blocks, and then with the chained exception. Okay, I'm going to explain in a project. All right. One more security exception. Again, it's related to the security. So when a resource, it is not is subject to security, like it is not I mean, it does have some limitation. Based on that, it is accessed. In that case, security exception occurs, right? So let's get into this, and I'm gonna let me create a class. Okay, contain exception 1. Okay, and then that's it. All right. So just I have created a class named contain exception 1. Okay, and within this class, I just create instance variable I, which is initialized with the value 10, and then one more with one more variable named j, and then it is initialized with 0, and one more k, which is not initialized with any value. All right, and now I define a class public void c. Okay, Here I just what I do k equal to I divided by j. I just do some data manipulation. So I'm just trying to assign the value of I divided by j. We get a value. That value is assigned to the k instance variable. So here I is 10 and j is 0. I'm gonna divide 10 divided by 0, and which is assigned to the k. Alright. And I would like to print this statement. I would like to print the k value. Here the value of k. Okay, let me create one more class x handle. So the name of the class is except handle, and I just make a check on this public static void main and click on finish. This is created. The name of the class is except handle. Here what I'm gonna do, like I'm gonna call that contain exception 1 class. This mth exep method, I'm gonna call this method being in the new class except handle. Okay. And this project, it is meant for exception handling. Okay, so I just I would like to monitor so normally whatever the code we would like to monitor, we place it inside the try block. Okay, so and then try block follows with the catch block. So now within this try block, I'm going to create an object for contain exception 1 bj equal to new. So let me okay, fine. I just created an object for this contain exception 1, and then what I do, the object, the reference variable is cobj. With this cobj, I'm gonna call contain exception 1 class method member, which is mthexep method. That I just call that method. Okay. Here I just print a statement system.out.println. Here except handle class main method just before the call statement. Okay. Just to know that before we call this method contains exception 1 dot mthee mthexep method. Before calling this method, I just print a statement, all right, in the outstream. Okay, now in the exception within this, so whatever I define within this try block, this will be, this code snippet is monitored. All right, this code snippet is monitored, and um, if this code snippet comes up with any exception, it's that is handled by this catch block. So we need to define the, here we need to give the exception. What kind of exception? Here already I have told, I have stated that 10 is divided by 0, right? So obviously some number related exception, that is arithmetic exception, would occur. So we need to give here the catch, we need to give. Alright, one more thing. Here you can see that this method throws arithmetic exception. Say this contain exception class. I just defined a method, right? So in that method, I am just using this throws keyword. Just suffix the method name. Throws keyword is used, and then the exception name. Here arithmetic exceptions. So this definition tells the Java that this method exceptexep method may come up with an exception, arithmetic exception. It may throw arithmetic exception. Just to tell the Java, I mean the JVM, we define with the, we using the throws keyword. Okay. Now I'm gonna in the except handle program, I'm gonna define the exception in the catch block. Exception is arithmetic exception, so I just give arithmetic exception. Okay, and the reference variable e or ae, arithmetic exception ae. Okay, and I would like to print the out.println just print within main method catch block. Okay, and just print the ae dot first ae dot, so it should be given like this. ae, see, you can see the first system dot out dot println. I just print a text saying that I am in this block. So where I'm in this statement, just to tell the end user that we are, the control is as of now, the control it is in the control executes, I mean this statement, within the catch block there is the control is within the catch block. Just to tell this to the end user, we print a text being in the catch block. All right. So within except handle class main catch block. And then the next statement, we have defined the catch block with the arithmetic exception with variable ae. So I'm just using the ae dot. When you click on the dot, it shows you can use get message, and then it will give you the whatever the error occurred, it will elaborate, it will give you the detailed error stuff. Here ae dot get stack trace, so it will help you to know about the error. Okay, now I'm gonna fine. So now we we have done with the program. I'm gonna run this. Okay, so let me give a quick recap. I have created a class contain exception 1. In that I declare instance variable ijk, and ij instance variables are initialized with values 10 and 0, and k value is not. Okay, and I define a method N.Thiruchitrampalam, which is defined with throws keyword. So throws keyword is used here. It is used to tell the Java, the JVM, that this method may come up with the particular exception. Alright, this method may throw up particular specific exception. Here, in case I have define arithmetic exceptions, and then inside the method I have initialized the k value with I divided by j. I just divide the I value with j, and whatever the result I get, I assign the result to the k value, and I print the k value within the method. Okay, I just print the value in the outstream. This is so, and then I create one more class except handle. This with the main method declared. Main method is defined just to run the program. In this method, main method, I create an object for this contain exception 1, and then I call the method which is defined in the contain exception 1. The name of the method is Mthexep method. These code snippet altogether is placed inside the try block just to ensure that just to ensure that the execution of these statements are quite monitored. Alright, so as you know that whatever the code snippet we place it inside the try block, those code executions are monitored by the JVM. Okay, and then I do define the catch block. Try always comes with comes with the catch block. Or finally, here catch block I defined the arithmetic exception, because here the numerical data manipulation goes here. That's the reason I define arithmetic exceptions, and which is I just within the catch block I define the arithmetic exception followed by the reference variable and within the catch block I printed whatever the exception occurred, just to get just to fetch data related to the exception occurred. So that is that's been done here. Alright, a.get message and a.get track message. These methods will give you enough detail about the error. Alright, so I'm gonna run this method. Let's see. Here you can see in the console. Okay, you can see all this. The console you can see except handle class main just before the contains exception 1 statement. So this statement is printed being in the except handle main method just before calling the contain exception 1 class statement. Okay, that is here. You can see the same thing here. Okay. So this is what. So this statement, okay, that got printed here, and then now here the control goes. Sorry, and then it calls this method, and then error occurs because 10 divided by 0, again it's an arithmetic error. So the control comes, the try block, the JVM, it throws an arithmetic error exception. That exception is caught by the catch block because we handle the arithmetic exception here, okay, using the try class block. And once the arithmetic exception is caught, we try to print the control here. Here you can see this within except. I just print a statement within except handle class main and catch block. So that is the one. Here you can see the same. It got printed. Okay, the exception is been printed, and then the next statement, I have called a method with the reference variable, arithmetic exception reference variable, that is get message. So it will give the the kind of error occurred in the program. So ae.getMessage, here you can see the output divide by 0. That's message related to the error occurred. So because of because we try to divide by 0, this error occurred. That's what it shows. And then ae.get stack trace. It will give you error related information, that is you can see it here, java.land.stack trace element here. Okay, fine. And one more thing, you want to have the particular that exception, name of the exception. Would you like to, if you like, if you want to know the particular exception, name of the exception, if you want to know the specific name of the exception, you can give ae dot fill in stack trace to string. See, you can see here, I just added one more method of the arithmetic exception with the arithmetic exception reference variable named ae. I just called a method fill in stack trace followed by the toString. It will convert it an object like to an human readable code. Alright, so here I just call that method, and so that you can see that it shows java.land.arithmetic exception. So whatever the exception occurred, it shows arithmetic exception. So so you would like to, if you would like to have the exception, name of the exception, then you can go with this method fill in stack trace dot string. Right. Obviously you do have many ways to get the name of the exception that occurred. All right, fine. With this, now I believe you got to understand how to handle an exception with the try catch block. All right, let me tell you one more thing, like what if like we don't give this try catch, we don't handle this we don't handle the exception. All right, we just given the code in the program. What happens? Okay, I just removed the try and catch block. I just within this you can see the code. We create the object and then we call the method. So how does it work? Actually, if you don't define any exception handler, Java handles the exception using the default handler. Alright, so here I just run this program. You can see that it will default handler will handle the request. Will default handler will handle the exception, and you can see it. You can see it right away. See, you can see exception in main thread divide by 0. All right. So you can see 3 lines of thing. The console, it contains 4 lines. All right. Let me tell you. Let me explain you this. Actually, the object is created here. All right, and then the system.println, we have created the object for contain exception class, and then system, we just print a text using the system.out.println. What do we print? Except handle class main just before the contain statement. So just before this, whatever the text we try to print, it got printed here. You can see it here. Okay, and then when we call this contain exception 1 method mth exep, it throws an error, and that error is handled by the default handler, and it's been put it in the it's been sent as a response in the outstring. Okay, and then you can see at pro except handle dot main except handle java 11. So it shows except handle dot java, this is a program, and main, this is a main method, and then handle java dot 11, it shows the 11, the number. You can see this is the 11th line, number 11. This is the here the error exception occurs. So when I call the contain exception 1.mthexep, it denotes here. Okay, and then you can see you need to go from downward to it will show the how the error occurs. It will show the complete flow, and then you can see .pro contain exceptions.mth contain exception 1 dot java 10. So contain exception 1, it is a class, and then you can see the number 10, the number 10. So contain exception, go to contain exception, and you can see the number 10. What it is? It is k equal to I divided by j. So I divided by j, the 10 divided by 0, that result would get, that result gets stored in k instance variable. So the result is 10 divided by 0. Again, it comes up with an arithmetic exception. Okay, that's the reason it shows the contains exception 1. In the line number 10, the error occurs, exception occurs. And what kind of exception? Name of the exception, java dot land dot arithmetic exception divided by 0, it shows. All right, so I believe you got it. So if you don't handle the exception, java handles with the default exception handler. Okay, now let me remove the I made it as a comment. Let me remove this. Fine. Okay, it shows this. Okay, then now we will see now we will see how can we have multiple catch block in a Java program. New class, just create multiple catch. Okay, and it does have the main method. Public static void main, do make a check mark. Okay, then click on finish. Here you see this. I'm just creating try catch. So multiple catch, right? So let me call the same contain exception 1 equal to cobj1 equal to, I create the object of contain exception 1, and I call the method of contain exception 1 class, that is mthexep method. Okay, here I'm gonna create multiple catch. So until then just went this. It shows an error. Null pointer. Okay. Okay, get message. Let me create multiple cache block. Let's see how does it work. Here what I do, like alright, I have created the interrupted exception in the second cache block, and one more, like here I just create the arithmetic exception, and I make it as, you can see the reference variable which is created as per the exception name for arithmetic exception AE and interrupted exception IE and null pointer exception NE, and in the last cache block it is just the exception. Okay, fine. Now you see I have created still it shows some error. Okay. You can see I have defined all try block. It contains the code snippet which we where in that we create the object for contain exception 1 class, and with that object we call the method which exists in the contain exception 1 class. The name of the method is mthexep method, right? And in the catch we do create 4 different catch block. So first catch block is null pointer exception, the second catch block is interrupted exception, and the third one is arithmetic exception, and the fourth one is exception. All right. So here, this exception, you can see this is the parent class of all the above three exceptions. So whenever we define the multiple catch block, we need to make sure that the parent class shouldn't be defined first. So it has to come behind, I mean it has to come next to the subclass. All right. So so whenever you define multiple catch block, make sure that parent class should be should I mean parent whenever you define the multiple catch block, parent class exception should appear at the last, I mean at the end of the catch block. It shouldn't prefix the subclass exceptions. For example, if I define this catch exception before this, obviously this will, or else I define this somewhere here. Okay, if I try to run this, if I compile, it will not get compiled because it will show some compilation error. The reason is the parent class exception, it appears first, right? And the subclass, or I mean it is followed by the parent class. It shouldn't be like that, because initially it will the reason is the parent class appears first, parent class exception appears first, and it's going to handle the exception. It can catch the exception, but it shouldn't be like that. The whatever the subclass exception that is meant for that exception, that has to handle. If in case if it can't handle, the subclass exceptions can't handle the exception, in that case it has to be passed on to the parent class, and it's going to handle that. All right. So so that's the procedure, and that has to work in that way. So don't forget, never ever define the exception, parent class exception, in the first, and it should appear at the end of the catch block. All right, fine. So let me show you. If I try to run this, it will show compilation error. It shows unresolved compilation problems. So the program is not compiled. There is a compilation problem. It shows, and it shows, see, unreachable catch block for null pointer. It is already handled by the catch block for exception. So these catch blocks are unreachable. So that's the reason. So any catch block which which we define, it should be reachable. If it is not reachable, obviously the exception would occur when the catch block will get into unreachable mode only when a parent exception catch block is prefixed the subclass exception. In that case, this exception, this compilation error would occur. All right. So I believe you got it. It is already handled by the. You can see the code. I am just selecting. You can see this. See, unreachable catch block for null pointer exception. It is already handled by the catch block for exceptions. So the exception here, null pointer exception, is a subclass of exception. All right. And similarly, interrupted exception, arithmetic exception, same, it applies. Okay, fine. Now let me place it in the right place. Catch, here I remove, and I put it here. Okay, and okay, fine. It shows some null pointer exceptions. Okay, fine. So it shows an error here, catch block unreachable catch block for interrupted exception. Here I'm gonna just I'm just creating. Let me throw an exception. To throw an exception, I just use the throw keyword. All right, and then I create an interrupted exception. Interrupted exception. Okay. In this code, what I do, I use keyword throw and then followed by the new keyword and then the exception name. So what does it mean? We create an exception named interrupted exception with the new keyword, and that exception is thrown using the keyword throw. Okay. Now the error went off. You can see on this. You can see in the output. You can see the output. Now the program got executed. You can see the output arithmetic exception by 0. Divide by 0. It shows that arithmetic exception occurred in the code snippet within the try block, and that's been caught by the catch block. We have defined 4 catch blocks. First one null pointer, and the second one interrupted exception, and the third one arithmetic exception. The third catch block, arithmetic exception, it it caught the exception. All right, here you can see arithmetic exception. Inside I printed this arithmetic exception ae.getMessage. You can see this. That's the reason you got the output. All right. Fine. One more thing. Let me make a point here. Whenever in here, let me also explain the finally thing. Just consider one more finally block. Why do we need this finally block? Just consider we open finally block is a block where we place some code snippet that the end user wants. That the developer wants to run the code snippet. All right. For sure. Let it be any kind of exception that occurs and the program terminates. All right, but any kind of exception may occur and the program terminates, but the developer who wants a particular code snippet has to be executed, all right, before the program terminates. So in that case, let me come again. The developer who write down the application, all right, who wants a code snippet should get executed before the application terminates. In that case, we place that code snippet within the finally block. All right. Let me give you the real-time, real-world programming example. All right. Let me give you the real-world application example. That is initially when when the application starts up, we open a file, okay, and program comes up with some error and some exception. So if it terminates, what happens to the file which is open, and that resource it is occupied by this application, right? So some other by a particular component, so that resource might be required by some any other component. So in that case, just to free up those component, we go with finally block. In this scenario, we can close that open file. That code snippet can be keyed in within the finally block. All right. So just here, I just type some text, okay. Mandatory code snippet must get executed before the application terminates I mean the thread terminates, thread or program terminates are placed here. Now when I run the program, this finally block, I mean this system.out.println what we text in within this finally block, it would get printed. Alright, let me see this. See here, you can see mandatory initiate the arithmetic exception, then the mandatory code snippet must get executed before the thread terminates are placed here. Okay, fine. I believe now you got to understand what is the try block, and in this program you got to understand the multiple catch as well the finally block. Okay, fine. Let me show you nested block. What is nested try block? Just let me create a program, nested try B. Okay, here I created the nested try B named class. Okay, within this, let me tell you before that nested try block is like when we define a try block, within a try block we call it as a nested try block. Alright, so let me code it here, try block. Inside I am gonna create one more try which is associated with the catch. Okay, and this will have one more catch. Okay, try catch. Here what I do, like I create the contain exception 1 equal to I create an object for contain exception. Okay, and here in the nested try block I do some I just declare a equal to 20 and one more variable b equal to, so whatever the method I mean the variable I declare, it is local variable because we define within the method, so it is called the local variable, not the instance variable. So b is declared, b equal to 0, one more variable, and one more variable c equal c, which is not assigned with any value. Now c equal to a divided by b. Okay, and I would like to print this statement. Out.print. I would like to print the value of c. So the value c. Okay. Here I just give some exception name. Initially I declare null exception, and inside just do println. Okay. And one more catch block here, the inner try block I created a key. I keyed in some code snippet, and then in the catch block, inner catch block, inner try catch block, null pointer exception is defined, and then in the outer catch block, I define the arithmetic exception AE. Okay, I'm just trying to print the exception. Fine. So you can see this is the so let me give you a quick recap what is nested here. Already I do have a exception class, and there is a class contains exception. It does have a method. Inside that there is some data manipulation happens here. All right, I try to divide a number and then print it out. So in the nested try block, the name of the class is nested try block, and here it have the main method because this program has to get executed. We do need the main method. All right. Within the try block, you can see the first try block is here. Okay, and then I just create the code, the contain exception one object. I create an object for this contain exception one, and then I define the second try block, okay, which I selected, and now inside the second try block I just declare three variables, integer variables. I mean A, B, C, and A and B are initialized with values 20 and 0, and C value, C got a result of A divided by B. So A divided by B, the operation occurs, and whatever the result we get, it is assigned to the C value, and I print the C value with the system dot println statement. Okay, here you can see with this this happens within the second try block, and the second try block holds the catch block. In that catch block, second catch block, I define the null pointer exception, and inside the catch block I print the exception message. Okay, and then you can see that the outer try block should have a catch block or finally block. So I define the catch block. The outer catch block holds the arithmetic exceptions. It catches the arithmetic exception, so it prints the arithmetic exception related message. All right, find it message. Now let me run this program. Before this, let me make a point. Here you can see nested try. The exception that occurred within the outer try block. Okay, the exception that occurred in the outer try block followed. That exceptions are handled only by the outer try catch. All right, not by the inner try catch. All right. Note on this. So outer try block may come up with any exceptions. That exceptions are handled by the outer try catch, not by the inner try catch. Okay, but wherein the inner try block may come up with an exception that are handled by inner catch block as well the outer catch block. That is, the inner try block may throw an exception yeah, and then outright inner catch block tries to handle that exception. If it can't, again that exception it is passed to the outer catch block, and that outer catch block tries to handle the exception thrown by the inner try block. If it handles, then the it throw it I mean it tells the end user that this exception is handled. All right, I believe you got it. Okay, fine. Let me run this program. See, you can see I want where the exception, I want the end user to know where the exception occurred, right? So let me till what the control the statement got executed, and where the real exception occurred. All right, let me print here system.out.println within the second try block. Just before the C value manipulation. Okay, so control comes here, C equal to this. This should happen. Let me try this. See, so within this second try block, this got statement. This still this. So the first try block, it is a pass through, and then the second the first try block doesn't come up with any exception, and the second try block it comes till the declaration of integer C, and then the statement got printed system.out.println within the second try block just before the value manipulation. This statement got printed here, so the control comes till this statement, and then the manipulation A divided by C B, that is 20 divided by 0, math operation occurs, and then the value is assigned to the C value. So here the exception occurs, so that's the reason this system.out.println C value, this it doesn't get printed, and then you can see arithmetic exception occurs in the C equal to A divided by B, and then it checks with the immediate catch block. The second try block code snippet throws an exception, that arithmetic exception. It is checked with the immediate catch block, that handles a null pointer exception. So again it's been passed, that arithmetic exception is passed through the outer try block, outer catch block, outer try catch block. That outer catch block handles the arithmetic exception. So that's the reason arithmetic exception, this statement, arithmetic exception AE.getMessage got printed. All right, so I believe you understand. Fine, let me show you one more. We're going to see the chained exception. Okay, let me see this. More chained exceptions. So chained exception here, I just give chain except. I create a class called chain except, and I make a check mark on this public static void main. Okay, in this what I do, like I create a class, a method which is void promo chained promo C. That is the name of the class, name of the method. I create a method. Here what I do, I create one I create a null pointer. I create an exception named null pointer exception. I create a null pointer exception. Null pointer exception n equal to new. How do we create the null pointer exception? Any exception with the new keyword, right? So null pointer exception. It is a redefined exception, and it is a it is a, it is an unchecked exception. All right. So let me create that. It is created now. See what is. Let me tell you what is chained exception. Chained exception is like is nothing but Java allows us to associate an exception with another exception. All right. And the exception that we associate, it describes the other exceptions. All right, let me come again. Let me repeat that. Chained exception, it is nothing but with this chained exception, Java allows us to associate an exception with other exceptions. To give detailed information about that exception. Okay. Fine. I have created this null pointer exception, and one more point is like chained exception gives two constructor for this parent class throwable. That is throwable. The name of the keyword throwable, and two constructor. One is throwable. Inside we just pass in the exception name, and the other constructor we just pass in the string and then the exception name. All right. Two constructor. So chained exception gives two constructors and two methods. Two constructors are throwable. Inside we pass in the exception name, whatever the exception we would like to add, we would like to associate, and the next with the one more constructor we can add the exception as well. We can give the description with the string. So second constructor comes with the two arguments, string and then the exception. And what are all the two methods this chained exception gives? One is init, the other one is just hold on. One is two methods are there. One is init cause and the other one is get cause. So these are all the two methods. Init cause and the get cause are the two methods. Chained exception gives to handle the exception. All right. So now I'm going to use the. Now I have created the exception, and I would like to associate an exception with this exception. How do I do that? Just I use this exception or reference variable n dot init cause. Init cause. You can pass in the whatever the exception. I would like to add arithmetic exceptions. So arithmetic exception, right? Fine. So I just created a method in that I created an exception, and I would like to associate an exception to another exception. In this scenario, I would like to add arithmetic exception to the null pointer exception. How do I do that? With the init cause method. All right. Fine. Now I just create a try block, which is followed by the catch. Here okay, fine. Here what I do, I just create I just throw an exception. How do we throw using the keyword throw? I throw the null pointer exception. Okay, let me check here. This null pointer exception is handled. Okay, here I just within the chain X main method catch block. Here I just print the exception, whatever the exception is caught. So ne dot fill in stack trace. Okay, and then one more I just so get cost method. Here what I do, just using the get cost. Fine. So let me give a quick recap. I have created a chain expect class, and then inside that a method called promo ce, and in that I create an exception named null pointer exception. And then once I created, I would like to associate an exception with this null pointer exception. So how do I do that? I take the null pointer exception reference variable, and I just press the key dot, and it comes up with the init cost method. So this method, what it does, it allows us to associate an exception with existing exceptions. So I pass in the arithmetic exception here, new arithmetic exception. You can see it here. Okay, that is the init method, and then now chained exception is created. All right, now in the main method, some I define the try block, try catch block. Within the try block, I throw the exception null pointer exception, and that's been handled. That has been handled by the catch block null pointer exception. Here I print in the exception detail as well the get cost, the associated exceptions. All right, let me print that. Here the output, the program got executed and I got the output within, you can see within the chain class main catch block. So here the control comes here within the chain block catch block. All right, and then what is the and then I execute this fill in stack trace with the exception reference variable. I call the fill in stack trace that gives this whatever the exception null pointer exception. Okay, and then I use the get cost method, so it gives null value. Here you can see the null value. All right, let me try with toString. when I give toString, it shows thing. Even here you can pass in some value. All right, fine. See, you can see the arithmetic. Um, you can see the null pointer exception that's been thrown in the output stream. All right. So I believe you understand how to handle this video. I mean, this session. Uh, this session has given you the complete knowledge on how to handle an exception in Java using the 5 keywords, that is try, catch, throw, throws, and finally, and then how to use the multiple catch block, and then how to use a nested try block, and then how to make use of the chain exception, how to create a chained exception and make use in the real world programming. All right. So let me catch you with further topics in the upcoming sessions. Please do subscribe to the channel, and please click on the bell icon so that you get notified on the new post. If you like this session, please share with your friends and well wishers. Have a nice time. Bye bye.